Welcome to the Pro Design Builder podcast, a show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. So, before we get started, I'd just like to thank our sponsors, the Pro Design Builder, which is a consulting and coaching firm for real estate investors who want to build spec homes. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Also, we're going to be hosting a house flipping 101 boot camp. We have two dates, March 26th and 27th in Tampa, and then April 16th and 17th in Fort Lauderdale. So be on the lookout for those dates if you are a real estate investor and you want to dive deep in person for those events. Also, want to the Nest Collab, which is a incubator for real estate investors um, in Tampa and South Florida. So if you're a real estate investor and you're looking to work hands-on with other experts in your field, the Nest Collab will be your connection for that. Also, the work in foster care is never over. As you know, I'm a foster dad. I'm an adoptive dad. I adopted two kids. I'm currently fostering now. If you ever feel the need to support our foster care initiative, feel free to do so. There'll be a link in the for Patreon. Some of the things that the initiative supports is buying additional beds for foster and adoptive parents. Also, providing a meal as the primary chef in the house. I can attest when someone brings a meal and I don't have to worry about thinking about dinner or making dinner. It's a big help. Also, we support strong families, so we feel like if the family unit is strong, then the family will be strong for the child. So we support additional date nights. So those are some of the things that we support in our initiative. All right. And without further ado, Janie Micek, which runs Studio 818, began as Restore 818 in Southern California. John Paul and Janie founded the company in 2010 and immediately began buying, designing, and renovating homes. Janie is the principal and founder of Studio 818 Design. As the creative director, Janie directly develops and oversees all architectural designs for the studio. She's a licensed architect, interior
Interior
architect.
designer, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, gotta get in trouble for that one.
All right. Hopefully that intro did you justice. How you doing today?
It did. Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
That summed up my entire life in
A little bit. I try.
sentence.
I tried to. So I'm not gonna lie. I'm excited about this particular episode because we're so in the same space, and I'll tell you a little funny story before we met you. So we were flipping houses and we were flipping in Wilton Manors, right?
Yeah.
So I just remember Cindy was on the MLS one day and she came across this house, right? And it was one of your projects, probably one of your earlier projects. I think this was like a rehab or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at the pictures. She was like, who did this house, right? And then we looked through the pictures and it was listed at a high price for the area and you guys got it. And Cindy was like, see, this is what I've been trying to tell you. We need to step our game up with the design and how we do things and stuff like that. And obviously later we meet you guys and we become friends, but I just wanted to share that story
It's
with you.
funny. I feel like that happened to us too in
Uh-huh.
California. We walked into an open house. Our agent brought us to an open house. He's like, I want you to see this, because he was like very design oriented. And when he found out that we wanted to start investing, he brought us to a house out there. And it's over there were like tiny homes, 800 square feet, and they
Yeah.
were going for $750,000.
Yeah, crazy
you
numbers.
know
Yeah.
and so we walked in and it was completely staged with thrift store finds. and it was
Mm-hmm.
so well done. And it was like that feeling when you know, the reason why people stage houses,
Correct.
it's that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I could live here. If this place
Yeah.
was empty, would not have had
You
that
you can't
first
put it
moment.
together in your head.
But
Yeah,
they did
exactly.
it that way, and we were like, this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
kind of how we started too.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so grew up in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up to immigrant family. My family's from Portugal. My parents
Okay.
came over here when they were in their early 20s. And then my brother was 6 months old, and then they had me about 3.5 years later. Both parents were factory workers. Worked really, really hard their entire life, and were able to save up enough money to be able to early retire by buying homes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they had, you know, my childhood home there in Boston, where I say Boston, but it's outside of Boston. Usually people
Yep.
don't know. So it's Milford, Massachusetts is where I grew up. And we had our childhood home, but they also had like a 2-story home that they rented out. So it was like supplemental income, and they saved their money, you know, all their pennies. And then when the
Mm-hmm.
2008 crash happened, they basically sold that one house in the suburbs of Boston, and we were able to buy 3 houses in Florida.
Oh
And so
wow.
they were able to live in one and rent
Yeah.
out two, and they still do that to this
Okay.
day.
Great. Great. Great.
Yeah. And so I grew up in a household of very hardworking individuals, and, the world is your oyster kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because they came from a country that was socialist, and they pretty much escaped that life and came
Mm-hmm.
here for a better life for their kids. And so school was very important, and working really hard to achieve your goals was something that they really instilled in us. And I knew from a very early age that I was inclined towards art. I was not really the greatest at math,
Mm-hmm.
but I loved, music and art. And if you were to ask some of my childhood friends, they would tell you, I'm not surprised that you ended up doing what you do,
Yeah.
because you used to come over our house and we used to move our furniture around and like do artwork for my walls and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. And so it's not a surprise that you ended up, doing what you do for a living. So from a very early age, that's something that really spoke to me. And that's what I really wanted to move towards. So that's what I ended up going to school for. So I went to school it's called Suffolk University, but it was the New England School of Art and Design in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my bachelor's degree there. Worked in commercial design for a very long time. So it was like the corporates, like the Google corporates, and
Yeah.
the corporate environment. So we're doing commercial design, but it's like for tenant improvements and
Mm-hmm.
corporate companies. I had a really great, couple of jobs in that industry. I was flown first class to Ireland and private jets, and
Oh wow.
not often. It wasn't like an often thing, but I did
Yeah.
do that
Yeah.
a couple
But
of
that's great
times.
experience, right?
It was a
Yeah.
great experience. But in 2008, I decided to leave my small town, because even though I was working in the city, I had bought a condo when I was 23 years old. I bought a condo in my hometown, renovated it with the help of my father, who was, installed my floors and,
Mm-hmm.
helped me do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to leave our small town. I just saw the world was so big, and my world there was just so small, especially because I was in the interior design world, and I
Mm-hmm.
was getting sent out to other
Other
countries, other
places is, yeah.
countries.
So you're getting flavors of
You're
different
getting
things.
flavors of other people, and it just was a dream of mine to actually move to Miami. But
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity presented itself for me to go out to California, and I took it. So in 2008, moved out to California right when everything started to crash. So the job that I had out there, because my company in Boston was acquiring a smaller firm in
Mm-hmm.
LA,
Yeah.
and they were like, go over there. That'd be great. And so I packed up my stuff and my dog and moved across country. And I
Mm-hmm.
got there, and they're like, oh, well, so
We might have to let you go.
yeah, no, we see the writing on the wall, and apparently they knew something that I didn't about the
Oh man.
economy and
Yeah.
everything. kind of got turned upside down. And
Mm-hmm.
I was able and fortunate enough to find a job within a month, but hated it. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually was laid off about 6 months after that.
Oh, wow.
And so I was living in California with nobody and with no friends or anything. I had moved out there with a boyfriend at the time. So at least he
Mm-hmm.
had a job. But I was like kind of stuck, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I decided to get my certification. I had already been a certified interior designer, which means you have to do accreditation. It's an accreditation program. So basically, you have to have a number of hours under an accredited interior designer or architect.
Yeah.
And then you also have to take an exam. Which includes, one set is like multiple choice and the other set is actually doing drawings. They give you like
Mm-hmm.
a study and you have to, 4 hours to be able to put together some space plan. And then there's a set of judges that say, yes, she passes or not.
Yeah.
So I had already done that before I left Boston. But once I was laid off, I decided that I was going to be taking the lead accreditation exam. Which is leadership and energy and honestly, it was so long ago, I don't remember. Efficiency design. So
Yeah.
basically, and they still have that now, they certify buildings, but I felt like that was going to be what really was going to set me apart from all the people that were looking for jobs there in
For
California.
sure.
And then I started working as a relocation project manager, which was basically working at a college campus that had grant money that was doing all of these construction buildings, like building a new library, a new theater. It's like it was all very outdated, and they had grant money to be able to build all these new buildings. So I was working under a construction development company on campus, and then every time they needed to take the staff and the students out and renovate a building. We were responsible for, managing the move of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I sat under like project managers, and
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's all very great experience. Yeah.
yeah, really good experience. And I knew it at the time. I was like, obviously, God is sharpening my pencil in this
Yeah.
department. And so I really learned some really great project management kind of mentality things that I took into our business moving forward. And then while I was there, I said, I had turned to one of my girlfriends when I was 29 and I was turning 30 the following year. And she was
Uh,
like, what do you want to do? Like, this is obviously not what you want to do for the rest of your life.
yeah.
And I'm like, I would love to flip houses. I would
Uh-huh.
love to flip houses. I bought into the whole flipping TV shows. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
We did too. We got sucked all the way in there.
yeah, we did. I think everybody does. They
No, exactly. So
changed it.
yeah.
So she said, well, why aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, why aren't I?
Hmm.
Like, hello.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, I started doing some research in classes and seminars. There's not a lot of,
Hmm.
it's usually seminar, like what you're putting together. It's usually
Yeah.
something like that. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, it's not taught in like a classroom environment, like at
No, it's not.
something like
Hmm.
that. So I found a seminar group that was putting something on, and I took a leap of faith and said, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn how to do this, and I'm going to start flipping houses. And then I got my bang for my buck, because in the process of that, I met my husband.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
We started doing flips together almost instantly. Within months of meeting each other, we were just barely dating, and we were doing our first flip together, and
Hmm.
it went well. And when I say went well, there was plenty of problems, but at
Yeah, of
least it
course,
went
of course, of
well.
course, of course, of course, of course.
And
And
then
we'll dive into into those stories. I'll tell you. So my story on how I got into flipping was, um Cindy was supposed to go to med school. And then right before she was supposed to go to med school, she wrote me a letter and said, Sam, because she was supposed to go to the islands in Anguilla.
okay.
And she was like, Sam, I don't foresee us having this family life that we talked about. I don't foresee us, kids and all this other stuff. And she was like, I don't want to go. And I just remembered I was pretty upset. and we had to go see our pastor, married counsel.
So you were
And
married at the time?
no, we were engaged,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So that was the deal. Actually, that's the. I said if you get into med school, we'll get engaged, right? So we're engaged at this point, right? And then now I feel like um
Bait and
the
switch.
banana in the tailpipe. She pulled the rug out from under me, and I told her that, and I'm just kind of like, this is not right, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, what fast forward a little bit. I asked her what was she gonna do if she's gonna stay. She goes, I have this Robert Kiyosaki program. Let's look into that. Right. So then I read the book, and then the book caught me. Like it was kind of like speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to this event, and then it had triggered all of the thoughts and stuff like that for me. And I needed one more event, which was the Fortune Builders guys event. And then right after that, I was like, I have enough that I'm just going to take some massive action. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew enough, and I had YouTube,
Yeah.
and I would just take steps, and that's kind of how my flipping career kind of started.
Yeah. That's good.
Hmm.
Good for these
And
seminar businesses. I mean,
yeah, I know they put that bug in there, and
yeah.
and if your effort, if you put in the effort, it'll
Yeah.
it'll pop out the other side. So
They're really great about getting you excited about it, you know?
no, for sure, it definitely comes with challenges,
Hmm.
and that's actually um what holds people up later, right? And be like, "Hey, all of these problems that you have to solve, right?" And we're
Hmm.
in an industry that we have to solve a lot of problems, right? So but before we continue on, I'm gonna just go back a little bit, all right? And what were you like as a kid? I know you said you showed some early signs with loving art, but what were you like as a kid?
Oh gosh, I mean, I talk about this all the time with my daughter now because we're living in an age where kids can have access to TV at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real struggle for me to, be like, no, you need to be outside playing and exploring and using your imagination and taking cardboard boxes and making cars out of them. Like, that's what
Yeah.
kids are supposed to do. And that's how
Right.
you are going to either find your passion or find what you love. And, we didn't have much. I wouldn't say that we were poor. That
Mm-hmm.
definitely was not the word that comes to mind. But my dad and mom, for as hard as they worked, they saved their pennies. So we had to get creative. And I was around other children whose parents also immigrated, so I wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
all alone in that. And so we would have to get creative with what we played with and how we had fun. And it wasn't like, here, have all these toys, or let's go, this day and age is let's go here and let's go explore that. We had to explore in our backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of, going into the woods and, pretending like we're camping and bringing a pot
Mm-hmm.
and a pan and starting a fire and making
Yeah.
ramen noodles. It was going for long bike rides to get a piece of candy,
Yeah. Yeah.
dressing up in, I had a girlfriend down the street. Her grandmother had, her whole basement was just like all of her old antique stuff. And we would
Mm-hmm.
just dress up in her uh, wedding gown, or, gowns from when she was younger. And so we definitely were able to explore. We had more freedom. And that's, I
Mm-hmm.
think, the thing that bothers me of this day and age. My daughter doesn't have the freedom to go and explore. And I wonder
Correct.
how that's going to affect kids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I was given the freedom to explore, and go out on my bike on my own with a girlfriend at age 9, and be back before the lights, before
Lights
the sun
came on.
goes down. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So,
So
so there's some similarities, but for me, we immigrated here from Haiti. So for us, we were poor, but not poor in spirit, right? So the thing that it brought out in me is I fell in love with art, similar to you, very early on. And that really opened up my creative mind, right? Even now to this day, like when you talk about walking into a space and then you could just see it clear as day, right? That's because of those art skills that you fell in love with that, people just, don't have. So
Mhm.
if you don't mind elaborating on what that early love for art and what it's done for you.
Well, I mean, I would say that for sure. Not sure if I want to admit it, but like art was my favorite class,
Yeah.
it
Hmm.
was, the place that I looked forward to. And unfortunately, you're kind of made in the school system to kind of be ashamed of that. Like, no,
Right.
math should be your favorite and
Hmm.
me, or, science should be your favorite. And like, oh no, actually, I like to be able to be creative and create things from nothing. And like
Hmm.
you said, just seeing something. It could be, gathering some like leaves or branches or something like that and creating a piece of artwork using that. I still do that to with my daughter today. Is like we just go on like little treasure hunts and try to get like nuts and berries and branches and leaves, and we make like a portrait out of it. Like what is your environment give you? And I think that for sure has translated in how we look at houses today, especially when we're looking at a renovation and we're walking into a house that is either bare bones or really needs to be cut down to the bare bones. Like, okay, well, now what can it be? So I think for sure that shaped my profession and why I went in the direction that I did, because I am able to, and what we do to freely transform things out of nothing,
No, no, for sure, for sure. And the crazy thing is it took me a long time to really understand, but God's highest form was creation and how he functioned and operate, right?
Right.
And being a creator is truly a gift. And not everybody has it. So the ability to kind of walk into a blank space or look or start putting down pen to paper and then later into plans into into actual building, all of that is a gift, and it's honed through those early skills of falling in love with art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been very, very important. So who was the biggest influence on you growing up?
I would say my mom and dad.
Hmm.
My dad built a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
He's a handy guy. And again, saving his pennies. I don't want to call him cheap because
Call it value
he's not
engineering.
gonna see this, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, value conscious, right?
Exactly.
And
That's
he didn't like, and to his point, like he could do a better job than if he hired. You and I know we hire
yeah.
plenty of people, and we're like,
Hmm.
why are you doing this for a living?
Exactly.
My kid
Yes.
could do
Yeah.
this a better job. So for him, he wasn't about to give his hard earned money to somebody when he knows that he could do it himself, and he liked doing it. So he had a lot of projects on the weekend. And so I could see him not only hardworking and saving from his full-time job, but also being able to build and create something from nothing. And now we have a shed in the backyard, or now he put it like an addition in the backyard because it was his blood, sweat, and tears. And to this day, I mean, he's 70. He just turned 70 this year, and he wants to put hardwood floors in. I'm like, Dad, you need to give it a rest. So yes.
Yeah. I he better quit.
Yeah. Well, he just got a
I
hip replacement
Oh my goodness.
recently, and now he's like, "Oh, I
Hmm.
can put floors into this house," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, we're
Yeah.
not doing
I,
that."
I hadn't done that kind of work in a while, and there was this particular project. I was like doing some fine tuning of some grout, right, so to speak, right. So, but I was down there for a very long time, and then when I finally stood back up, I was just like, I think this damaged me,
Yeah.
right. And no joke, it did for a while.
Yeah. I
so
did
t-
that
so
last week. I
tell your dad
assembled
he,
a
he he better stay away from there.
I try, but it's like honestly, if he's not moving, that's the other
Hmm.
thing, is like he needs to move. And I was like, you need to get the hip replacement surgery because you cannot not be mobile.
Hmm.
He needs to be moving and needs to be doing something, and that makes him happy and that makes him fulfilled. I feel like he gave that to me. I always people talk about like retiring. I'm like, I don't think I'll ever stop doing what I'm doing in
Yeah.
some form or capacity, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay.
So yeah, I got that from him. I would say for sure my parents,
No,
and
for sure.
how hard they worked, and they set themselves up. They were able to early retire pretty young, you know, and so they're living the vida loca up there in
Yeah.
Palm Coast. So
Good. Good. What was there a defining moment for you as a kid? Did you ever fall into any trouble or anything like that, or were you just kind of straight and narrow?
no.
Uh, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, okay. So coming from an immigrant family, right? So we were, first 3 years I was in English as a second language, because my parents didn't speak English, so I
Hmm.
didn't speak English,
Correct.
and so they separated us,
Yep.
children. So it was Brazilian, there's a heavy Puerto Rican population up there, so I knew all the Spanish speaking kids,
Hmm.
Brazilian and Portuguese. Now the demographics of cultures have changed up there, but still they have a lot of, you know, immigrants up there, and they segregate you, they separate you from the rest of the classes.
Correct.
So from a very early age, you're with these group of people, and about third grade, they start to disperse you in the regular classes. You learn how to,
Hmm.
you know, read in English and speak enough in English that you can now be assimilated into the rest of the student population, right? But these were
Clever
my
wording.
core
Clever
friends.
wording. Is it?
So they were my classmates, and so they were like my core friends from first, second, and third grade. So
Yeah.
we continued on together,
Hmm.
and a lot of them would probably say that they were underserved community. Is that another
Yeah.
word of, like, you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
didn't have a whole lot, you know, lived in some really kind of shady parts of town. Even though it's, you know, Milford as a whole was a great town to live in, there were some kind of rough areas, and so I found myself in those rough areas hanging out with my friends because they were my
Yeah.
friends from childhood. And
Correct.
so they would, as a teenager, I definitely rebelled a lot. I had a lot of strife with my dad. My mom
Hmm.
did the best she could. She was really great growing up. I take how she raised me, you know, to heart, and I in I try to recreate that with my child,
Correct.
because of course, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, Mom, I will never treat my kid like that. And then you have a kid, you're like, oh, okay, I see why,
Yeah. Exactly.
you know.
Exactly. No. Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I was hanging out with a pretty rough crowd
Hmm.
in high school. And at the time, my boyfriend was a lifelong friend, became my boyfriend kind of naturally. And
Hmm.
I would see his upbringing or his household situation, and it did not match mine.
Yeah.
And I, at the time, didn't realize, and like I recognized that something was a little wrong. Like his mom was um a single mom. She had 8 children, all different fathers.
Oh wow.
She was on welfare. I'm not knocking any of that, but I just, the
Correct.
quality of their life was not, it wasn't like, he was not pushed in school. He was an
Hmm.
all-star. He was on varsity football as a freshman. He was really
Hmm.
good at football and really good at basketball, but he did not have a male figure at home pushing him. And she was
Hmm.
busy with her other children,
Correct.
you
She got
know, so
yeah,
she
a lot on
didn't,
her plate.
he got kicked out of school for something kind of silly. I feel like they kind of, you know, I felt like they were trying to push out a certain demographic of people from the school because some of the preppy kids were doing the same stuff, but they weren't getting in trouble.
Correct.
And so they kicked him out of school, and she didn't really push him to continue to go to another school. Like, she didn't even have a car, so she couldn't
Hmm.
even bring him to another school, and there was no male figure being like, no, you got to do this, he had no mentor. And I just kind of saw his life sadly kind of take a really bad turn.
Hmm.
And then I saw this happening in my teenage years with children, you know, people I hung
With
out
other
with.
people around you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just didn't have what I had with my parents, and
Hmm.
they just kind of took a left turn. I took a right.
Yeah.
And I say all the time, like, why did I end up the way that I did and they didn't? You know, we all hung out together. So what's
Hmm.
different about me? And I think that differentiator is definitely my home life, my
Yeah.
family, my parents. I always had like a home base, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew like how a man is supposed to treat a woman because of how
Correct.
my father treated, and how a relationship's supposed to be. We spend
Mm-hmm.
time together.
Yeah.
And so when I was out of that environment and seeing how other people did it and it wasn't working,
Turned out. Yep.
and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't want that, so
Mm-hmm.
my first year of high school, I wasn't doing so great, but sophomore year I was like, I am going to study. I also had a really good guidance counselor that
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason saw something in me and pushed me and stayed on top of me and helped me get my grades up in high school so that I could get into a college. And I ended up graduating on honor roll, which was like something I never would have expected,
Mm-hmm.
considering where I was just a few short years
Towards.
before that. But
Yeah.
that was eye-opening. And I do look back now because it's been 20 plus years,
Yep.
and I see like, where my life could have ended up if
Correct.
I
Mm-hmm.
didn't apply myself and I just let myself kind of go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
So
So this is your story is very similar to mine. So immigrant family. We are in Esau because English was my second language. All right. So um, in a lot of similarities. So for me, I struggled. I really struggled in school. But when I go into the background of everything happening, it was like, no, duh, you struggled. You were
yeah,
in the struggle,
yeah.
right? The environment, the people, just English not being your first language, your parents not being equipped to like move things along or be able to kind of say, hey, listen, he needs this.
Mhm, mhm,
So for me, I started out with Esau, which is segregated, based on your language and stuff like that. But then what that turned into is I wasn't excelling. So that turned into it's around the third grade, dropout prevention. And then in dropout prevention is pretty much so that's where I was surrounded around foster kids, group home kids, and honestly, a lot of troubled kids, and some of them, a lot of them ended up in jail.
mhm,
And in that particular environment, I had to survive. I had to fit in, right?
mhm, mhm,
And I was struggling to learn, so I was super frustrated. One of
mhm.
those kids like you asked me to read, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's dumb,
Yeah.
right? but um, but similar to you, I had great parents. I had a two-family system. I didn't have the chaos that I saw happening in the street in my home, right? We had a
Mhm,
different environment. They were um parents were married for 39 years, before my dad passed, right? They were Christian and they lived it and they showed what it was like to be a servant in every aspect. So, I definitely accredit that experience to them and why I'm here. Crazy story. Just to tell you how bad it was. I was in the fourth grade, and my then teacher, and I still remember his name, is Mr. Laurie. But this tells you how bad a shape I was in. He goes, I bet you $100 that you will not graduate high school. Right? I was like, what? I'm gonna graduate high school, but just think about that, right? That's where I was, right? And then I remember I did make a pivot in the eighth grade away from dropout prevention, and then I excelled, but I came back to his classroom, right, after I had a full scholarship. I graduated high school, and then
Nice.
I spoke to his class, and I told
Aw.
him, yeah, exactly. I told him about a lot of challenges and growing up in a similar environment and how there's opportunity that could be created if you just kind of work towards it. So that was uh
That's a great moment, I'm
it
sure.
is a great
Yeah,
moment because you
yeah.
kind of like, that was my checkmate. Like, okay, you didn't think I was gonna do it, but here I am. I'm here.
Yeah. Did he give you the $100? Like, are you gonna keep us in suspense?
The crazy thing is, I never brought it back up to him.
Oh,
I
you
never
know,
did.
he obviously saw something in you that would have worked with you. Because
Hmm.
I'm very careful to not do that, because I felt like growing up, I got a lot of that reverse psychology, and
Yeah.
like I just internalized it. I was like, oh, okay, so you think I can't do it, so I can't do it, you know? So,
Yeah.
like, don't tell me that to try to motivate me.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
need
Yeah.
I need praise. I
Yeah,
need you to say
exactly.
you're doing a good job,
Hmm.
like what is one of my love
Yeah,
languages,
exactly. No, good. No, I that makes sense.
Mm,
That's kind of funny. So
great.
so so you tell me about you told me about your experiences in interior design, and then now you started going down this track into house flipping, and that's something that you wanted to do. So tell me about what that first house flip was like for you.
Um, well, I had John Paul,
He
JP.
was already experienced. Yeah.
He was
Hmm.
already experienced in that. So
Hmm.
for sure, getting the deal accepted was all him, because I was
Hmm.
just like, I want to get the deal accepted. Like, let's just put this number in. And I remember he was like, no, you're gonna put
Hmm.
it in for $20,000 less. And I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
gonna lose this deal. It took me
Yeah.
so long. And if this is it, then like we're over.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
He's like, no, you're gonna put an offer in for $20,000 left. Sure enough, they accepted it, and I was like, okay, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it was not the first time that I was in construction, but I came
Hmm.
from the commercial background. So like, a lot of these commercial projects, these commercial builders, GCs, they win a bid based on a certain set of qualifications. So
Correct.
we already know that they're legit. They have to meet the number, they have some qualifications. When you're doing residential and when you're doing flipping, and the first time you hire somebody, it's the scariest thing. And unfortunately, I have more horror stories than I have good. But I knew that my background in commercial and project management, I knew how to keep things organized. I knew that I took seminars, like you don't ever want to pay more than what they've given you. So if somebody's asking you for an insane amount of money as a deposit, like you can't have all that money laying out. You've never worked with this person before. And if they are
Hmm.
legit, they're not going to need that. They just need to get paid along the way. So that first project, we worked with a GC that was recommended to us, but again, you got to work with small time people because you don't have big time
Hmm.
budget.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
you're kind of hiring subcontractors, and you're asking for referrals. You're doing your best to kind of stay on top of them. So we ended up finishing it with the same contractor, but it eked along pretty slowly,
Hmm.
slower than we wanted to. So we learned a lot in that particular one, but it was probably the highest grossing one that I did have, because it
Okay.
was California.
Oh
So
yes,
things
yes,
were just
yes.
going up and up and up. So that time that we
Hmm.
lost was actually to our benefit, because things
Yes.
were going up
We're going
higher,
up. Yeah. Yep.
you
Yep.
know.
No, that's great.
So that worked out really well, and we did quite a few there. And so JP was working as a consultant for the seminar business that I met him at,
Hmm.
and I was still working as a project manager. So we were just kind of navigating those two things, and that was great. And then that's when we decided, we could buy 3 houses in Florida for the price that we have one here. And
Hmm.
the one thing that we did not factor in was that the mentality of the buyer here in Florida was so different from the
Yeah.
mentality over there. So over there, we
Hmm.
were getting 50 to 100 over asking.
Hmm.
And
That's not. That's
here,
not. That
yeah,
was
we
not
were
South
getting
Florida.
50
Hmm.
to 100 under asking. And we were like,
Yes.
well,
That
okay.
sounds about right. That sounds
It's
about right.
not shooting fish in a barrel, because we're like, we're
No.
gonna kill it out there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that didn't that didn't work out quite as planned. Uh,
Hmm.
but we got used to like how to do things, and not One thing that we struggled with was not to put too much into it. You know, he loves design. JP loves transformations and design as well. And I feel
Hmm.
like in a partnership, when you're flipping houses, you kind of need somebody to, like, for me, I need somebody to kind of
Dial
like,
you back. Yeah.
yeah, dial
Yeah,
me back
exactly.
a little bit, you know.
Not
So,
amp you up. Yeah.
yeah, he was all like, yeah, let's do this, you know. And so we were
Yeah.
great and we put out these great houses. I
Hmm.
do think we probably could have made a little bit more, but you know, it was fulfilling for us, right?
For
So
sure.
I was proud of what we were putting out, and people still say to this day, like, we are friends with a lot of people that have bought our houses and they've called us
Hmm.
back for work. That's a
Yeah.
huge testament to the type of work that we did, because you know, a lot of people were a little worried about buying from house flippers because they feel like
Correct.
they cut corners, they don't take permits, and they do cheap
Yes.
stuff. And we
Hmm.
didn't do that. So it worked out that we kind of built a name for ourselves that helped us spin off the design studio. And now we do interior design, yes, but because of our investment background, we really try to do it like the whole package. So
Correct.
you don't even have a house yet, we can help you
Hmm.
find a house, because we're
Yeah.
both real estate agents as well.
Correct.
We'll help you find a house. We'll do a cost analysis for tearing down that house and building new, or
Hmm.
renovating this one. And so we are really involved from the beginning, and then we're able to take the whole project through to installing furniture and helping you move in at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Full service, completely. So,
Yes.
similar to you, when I did my first real estate flip, I hired a contractor, fired a contractor, hired a second contractor, fired a second contractor, hired a third contractor. These are painful lessons that
Yeah.
I learned, right? But you learn so much from them, right? And guess what? I don't have to do anymore. That process,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I learned, learned the first time. But then that's kind of similar to you. That's kind of how I got into construction. It was like, well, listen, if this stuff is going to keep happening, I just need to just kind of just
Take
run it.
control over it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that's what that process was like for me, and I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles with anybody that is jumping into house flipping or
Hmm.
renovating, is this contractor element. And
Hmm.
then also too, Cindy and I both love design as well. As a matter of fact, the only time that we fight is over design. uh, Not so much so now anymore, but I used to want to definitely put my thumb on it. Now
Yeah.
we're like on the same page with our wavelength, that I don't have to, necessarily co-sign as much as I used to. So that's
I'm good. We're good in that way, that he kind of stays in his lane and I stay in mine.
hmm.
And it's not any, like, he'll offer his opinion, but he knows, like, we used to joke, we had a subcontractor that used to do wall finishing for us. And I would say, I want this, and then I want this wall to jet out here, and then this one slightly here. And then I'd leave and they would talk amongst themselves, and they're like, why are we doing this? And maybe we should do it this way. So they'll call me back and they'll be like, I think we should do it this way. I'm like, nope, it's definitely the way that I said I wanted it to be. And they're like, I think it's going to look weird. And then when it's done, they were like, oh, okay. And so after a while, they were like, okay, we're not even going to question her. She knows what she's doing. So it's going to be a fabulous, I'm sure. And so he's good in that regard, that I am able to kind of head that up. He's really good at landscape design,
For sure.
so he's done a lot of the landscape design and installs for our houses, and we've even
Hmm.
done it for clients as well. So he's got a background in landscape design. Maybe
Oh,
someday you
great.
have a little chat with him on this podcast, but he has a background
No, for
in
sure. No, no,
landscape.
no, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, he's got a
pick his
different
brain when it comes to
story.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys have been part of some very beautiful projects. Like, literally, I walk in the house, I'm like, I haven't seen this type of style before, right? And they've grown, in a way that's just, eye popping. Tell me about your first spec home that you built, and what was that process like, and what were the hurdles that came with that one?
So that house that so the first flip we did, or the one that we did ground up?
ground up
Okay.
construction. Yeah.
The hurdle, I would say it was the first time that we were building something from scratch. So somebody might say, well, then that's great because you have control over everything. Yeah, but the possibilities are endless. And like, how do we narrow it down? And so
Hmm.
definitely there are our experience in the real estate market and selling our renovations, because when you do a renovation you're stuck with the footprint and you do your
Correct.
best and we open up walls and stuff, we do some pretty amazing things, but you do have limitations. And we would also host our own open houses, and we did that on purpose because we wanted to hear people's feedback on like what worked for them and what didn't.
Hmm.
We would ask those kinds of questions because we want to know what our buyers looking for.
Correct.
So when we went into designing the whole floor plan for this house, we took all of those years of people saying like, I wish that it all opened towards the pool, or I wish that I didn't have to look at the house, or in our case, the first ground up spec home that we did was across the street from an apartment complex.
Hmm.
So, looking out the front door window was nothing to look at,
Nothing great.
and
Yeah, exactly.
didn't want to highlight that, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we designed it so that you got clear stories at the very top and you could see the sky, but you didn't actually have to see
The
it
apartment.
was,
Yeah.
it basically invites the person coming over to just walk in through the front door, and then from here to the
Look
pool is what you
outward.
should be
Yeah,
looking at,
exactly.
and
Yeah, yeah,
forget
exactly.
that what you just
Hmm.
saw.
Hmm.
So taking those into consideration, that really helped us develop the floor plan for that house, for an ideal. A lot of people like split floor plans where the master is in a completely different side of the house. So if you have kids, your master suite is going to be, on the opposite side of the house. And so we implemented that, and everybody wants to overlook their pool. They love the inside outside environment. I think you and Cindy actually came, I think she was pregnant at the time, and we hung out at that pool there. And so
Very
it's
nice. Hmm.
it's just an environment. It's just like, when I'm here, this is my peace, and I don't have to like, worry about the outside world. And the house limit is here, but it extends further with this outdoor space that I can see with full height windows, and I have the doors open and I can hear the, fountain from the pool, and it just kind of drowns out all of the city noise. And so the challenges we had there, I would say, the we underestimated how long it would take,
Hmm.
because when you're doing a ground up home,
Yeah.
first of all, you've got to do the drawings for everything, and we do
Correct.
drawings for renovations too. But getting it through the city with, like, when you have
Without
renovations,
a million comments. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, there's certain
Yeah.
departments in the city that review it, but when you have a new build, now it's all of the departments. Or civil, it's the site, looking at, one of the issues we had was pervious and impervious calculations. So
Correct. Correct. Correct.
we were trying to build to the limits of the setbacks, but we had to be careful with the material that we put down on the outside, because needed to have the water, like runoff and rain, to be able to go through the ground and not just run off into the streets. So they
Hmm.
have calculations that you have to stick with. So learning all of that for doing a new build and those regulations, that was a new one for us. But nothing that we couldn't handle. It
Of
just was
course. I
new,
mean, once
right?
once you've done a few transactions and large scale remodels, it kind of prepares you. I feel like when you do the level of design and reconfiguration in a space where you're just using the existing box and you like reconfigure the whole bathroom, the kitchen location, and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. I feel like building a home is easier from that perspective,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't done that, I feel like it becomes a real challenge if it in your head, kind of trying to maneuver all of those details.
Yes, agreed.
Hmm. No, that's great. Obviously your projects continue to grow, from there. And I wish I had pictures to kind of show, but maybe I'll just throw your website, on in the link description, so you can kind of see exactly um what type of projects that they do. So so then you guys, when did you guys officially start functioning and operating as, design build, where you provide this full service model to your clients?
Um, Officially, I know that in 2017 is when we started to take on interior design clients. So they were small renovations, kitchen, living room, bathroom, renovations. And then we were trying to pursue bigger and bigger projects. And then I would probably say in 2020 is when we started really pursuing the whole shebang. We call it the concierge service for
Correct.
building,
Hmm.
because we are the central point of contact for the client. It usually starts with us. We prefer it to start with us. We've done it in
Yeah.
different ways, and
Hmm.
we've only proven to ourselves that it doesn't
It
work that
doesn't work.
way.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
it needs to start with one person, one
Yep.
entity, whether it be architect or designer,
Correct.
whatever, but they need to be able to carry the project all the way through. Because what happens in the traditional design bid build is you as the homeowner is hiring the architect and hoping that they're good with the interior designer, and then hoping that they're good with the GC. You're putting that whole team together. You don't have experience and you don't know the questions to ask. You're going by referrals. You don't know what you don't know, so you're relying on them to tell you. And what happens is oftentimes, if architects, GCs, or designers don't have already a working relationship together, there is a lot of pointing fingers. Oh, well, that's not my job. Sorry, like call her, or that's not my job. Call him. And then you, as the homeowner, is stuck in the middle, mediating that. And so we saw that was an issue with our smaller renovations that we were doing, and we wanted to bridge the gap in that area, because we felt like it's not fair for the client. Some of them know it, they've done renovations, they know a little bit about the industry. Some of them had no clue, and you
Correct.
just kind of see them walking off a cliff and you can't do anything about it, right?
No,
And
correct.
so
Hmm.
it's so much easier for them to come to us first. We do a project assessment, which is like a feasibility study. We get really granular on the budget from day one. So, a lot of people are like, I want to do this, this, and this, but their budget doesn't align. And then
Yeah.
you ask a GC, no offense to you, because I'm not sure how you work it, but it's pretty
Hmm.
common practice. Even our GCs that we work with every day,
Yeah.
they just all they can do is an allowance, because they don't know what you're
Hmm.
going to put in there. They don't know
Yeah.
what walls you're going to move, so it's a good starting point, but that number always changes once you get into like, okay, well, this person likes Scandinavian design, which
Hmm.
there's going to be a lot of
Correct.
custom built-ins, or
Correct.
this
Correct.
person's okay with shaker style, so we could do
Hmm.
prefab. So we
Yeah.
get to the nitty gritty of those from the beginning, and we're able to put together a budget based off of your actual aesthetic, based off our historical
Yeah.
understanding and
Past
experience.
experiences. Yeah. Exactly.
And so
Hmm.
before you even, one of our things in our presentation is it is easier to use an eraser than a wrecking ball. So you don't
Correct.
want to build something and then be like, oh wow, that didn't work out, or this is going to be too expensive and I'm going to run
Hmm.
out of money and I have to stop the project. So we don't ever want you to get into that situation. It's just paper in the
Yeah.
beginning. So let's
Hmm.
start talking about, like, maybe you just do that addition some other time. And
Correct.
why don't we focus on the things that are really going to make your quality of life better in this
Hmm.
particular property? And so we work really intensively on the budget from day one to be able to actually achieve the ultimate goal of renovating or building or whatever. And then we bring the architects, the GCs, any of the I wouldn't say trades, because the GC is responsible for the trades, but anybody that is supposed to be involved with engineering or architecture, we bring all of those people under our umbrella so that the client doesn't have to worry about coordinating all of that. So, and we work with some really amazing people. So, it's like really just bringing the team together, and we've done it so many times before. We know what everybody's role is. We know what, our capabilities and limitations are, and we work really well together. And then that's what, the client experiences, an easy, I mean, when I say easy, it's streamlined, it's organized. There are problems. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of once we enter into construction, we spend a lot of time explaining to the client what could happen. I think we have like a
Correct.
page document, like what to
Mm-hmm.
expect,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that things are going off the rails on your project.
Correct.
This
Yeah.
happens all the
This just
time,
happens all the time. Yep.
but we know what to do, and we're
Mm-hmm.
here to support you. Don't be afraid. Don't
Correct.
be fearful. Like, you've got a
Don't
team of
panic. Yeah,
people.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's literally never been a problem that we haven't been able to overcome. We
Correct.
are in the business of solving problems, just like you
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
saying.
exactly. No, exactly. No, exactly. So you played a pivotal role in me, going into design build. You probably don't even know how pivotal it was, but
Oh.
so I was stuck in this design bid build model, right?
Mhm.
And very frustrated. And then I asked you to go to coffee. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. No.
Yes, yes, yeah. And then I was asking you about your model, right? But what I had going on for me in the background was Cindy was pregnant. This baby was coming. So
Mhm.
our house was going to be changing. She was my right hand person for a very long time, and I knew that wasn't going to be the case anymore. And I needed to do something different. So I remember sitting down with you and you kind of went through your model and why it was important to do this, and that. And then I sat there and I just looked at this paper. I was like, this is what I need to do. Right. And what happened after that is I found this conference, and it's all design build contractors.
Mhm.
And then from there, I went through 300 podcasts that they had. And then I met my mentor, which really kind of, I have two mentors, but both of them are like 8-figure design build contractors. So they really drilled down into me. But it all started with you. So I just want to tell you,
Oh,
thank you.
I
Thank you
love
for
it.
that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's not a problem. I'm
No,
glad that, I could give back in some way, because I I joke all the time that I have a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, because
me
it's the
too.
only way I learn. And I'm like, please don't make this mistake. Like, I just
I
don't like
know.
to see people,
Mhm.
the pain, because there are some stressful points, right? And so I'm just curious, why wasn't it working for you? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I would like for you to also, because I love when contractors talk about this. And I think that a lot of contractors miss the mark on this. And
So
um,
it wasn't working for me because there's just too many gaps in the process, right? It was very similar to what you were describing with whether it comes down to homeowner selection. So how I'll break down how contractors operate and how I was operating at some point, right? Is I'll start out with an allowance. I'll tell you, okay, this is kind of what materials could potentially cost, and then what would happen is the client would always go over. The assumptions would never be fully right. You move
mhm,
forward with assumptions, and the next thing you know, now there's conflict in the relationship because the assumptions were either a little too low, or some of them were didn't consider all of those and didn't have the right counts. And these are all the things that are potential hurdles in a project that will trip you up, right?
mhm,
And I kept seeing these. I would do changes, right? After each transaction, I've always been smart enough to review each transaction and say, hey, listen, I'm not doing that anymore,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
So when I started looking at also the thing with having outside architects, sometimes an architect will bring or a client will bring full plans to you, but then what happens is the client put the plans together. They know the plans like they're back of their hands. They know why they want to live that way. They know a whole bunch of things, code changes. They know all of that, right? And as the GC, you get the plans, you make some assumptions, but the reality is because you didn't walk those plans through with the architect, you don't
mhm,
know the plan like the back of your hand. So I just
mhm,
felt like there was just a lot more gaps in the process
mhm,
that could trip you up to not have a smooth transaction. So
mhm,
when I really started diving into, handling the design now and handling the architecture and then also handling the construction, before I got to the construction, I knew it like the back of my
right.
hand
This is,
compared to
yeah.
before where
You
I
are
was still
part
kind
of
of
the
figuring it out.
decision.
Yeah,
making
exactly.
process, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And we also, I know you probably do the same. We purchase everything as well because
Correct.
we found that in that process that was a nightmare because even with the best intentions that the GC would have a list of things to go and purchase,
Hmm.
didn't really check off that it was like brass or matte
Yep.
black, and
Hmm.
they received it, didn't open it, like I got it,
Yep.
it's here.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And then when they go to install it, it's, oh no,
Oh,
this is not the right color, and
and then
now
it's
we
too
have to
much
wait
time has
3
passed.
weeks for
Yeah.
this.
Hmm.
So having ultimate control, it doesn't make me a control freak,
Yeah.
to a certain degree. I just want to make things smooth, and that's the only way to
Hmm.
do that. Yeah, so
Yeah, I got that part from you too. Purchasing the material in advance, storing it, checking it, making sure it's there, and then, and through COVID, this actually saved me. It was amazing to me because we had all of these price increases and things like that happening, and
you're
once we kind of
ahead.
locked it in and we just
Hmm.
purchased it, we didn't get fall into that trap.
Hmm.
So all of the skills and stuff like that was learned in design build is what I translate into, the coaching of understanding how to do, spec homes and
Yeah,
plan correctly,
yeah.
so utilize all of those skills to kind of help investors, grow themselves that way.
Well, kudos to you for going out and trying to get that information. I think a lot of
No,
people
for
get
sure.
really stuck in their in their office, and they're like, I don't know how to fix this, but going
Mhm.
out, thank God for podcasts, right?
I
Because
know. I
going
know.
out and like listening to other people's,
Hmm.
how they handle things, and like,
Hmm.
okay, you're not alone. Other people have
Yeah.
felt this way too.
Hmm.
And going out and meeting people in the community that are in your industry. I don't know how you've been received. Sometimes I like reach out to people and they're like, yes, come to my office, let's talk,
Yeah.
and then others are like, no, I'm not going to give away my secrets, and I'm like, listen,
S-
there's
it, it's it's
abundance of work out there. Like, let's help
Yeah,
each
no.
other.
This is how well I've been received. So I met my mentor in Phoenix, Jeff in Phoenix, and he dropped a big nugget on me. And here's what he said. He says, "Sam, I don't sell a kitchen. I don't sell a custom home. I don't sell a renovation. I sell a system that gets you to that custom home, that gets you to that renovation, that gets you." And then I remember writing it down. And when I went back to the room, my wife was there. I was like, baby, maybe I've been looking at this wrong the whole time, right? And then the next time I saw him, I was like, hey, you dropped the fattest nugget on me. You don't even know how big it was, but this is what you said, right? And he was like, yeah. After that conference, I spoke to a lot of people. I just came up with this idea. I said, what if I fly up to Michigan and shadow you for 2 or 3 days? Are you open to that? He was like, yeah, I'm open for that. I was like, all right, throw out a few dates.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, exactly. So I threw out a few dates, and I came, I flew in, and then I sat in every meeting with him because his operation was over $10 million. I sat in every meeting with him. I just took a bunch of notes. Anytime I had a thought or something like that, he would just answer it for me, and I just kept scribbling, 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 scribbling. And then we went to dinner, one night, and he said, Sam, nobody's asking me how the secret sauce. Like, I have never, I've been in the business almost 30 years. No one has ever asked me how do you create the sauce, or let me spend time and kind of shadow you or stuff like that,
Yeah.
so that was a great experience. And then next I went to another conference. I met someone, and he's like, come to Minnesota. I was like, yeah, I shadowed this guy for a few days. He's like, come for a week.
Nice. Yes. And then you look
and
at
I
like,
did the
oh my
same thing.
gosh, this would have been so much easier if I had
This
done
would have
it this way, right?
exactly, like, I could have saved a few years, right?
Yeah.
I could have saved a few years of experience and aggravation and stress, like if I knew the route to go, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So, so that's my story with design build. So, tell us a little bit more about your business. This is time so you to kind of share and
Sure. So we have John Paul, my husband, business partner, I'm the creative arm. So I work with the clients one-on-one when it comes to pulling together the design. He's like the one that they meet first. Oftentimes, if we try to do meetings together, especially like meet and greets, because we're a team and they want to talk to me about certain things and to him
Mm-hmm.
about certain things. But we moved our family out of Fort Lauderdale 3 years, almost 4 years ago. So we have a little 3-year-old and we have a 9-year-old. They go to school up there. So it's very hard for us to kind of do the two of us together, but we try to do that as much as possible. But because he's the numbers guy, I don't do math. He's the numbers guy, and he's the forefront. Basically, he's the one that steps in, meets with them, does like the discovery call with them to get get an idea of what it is that they're looking to achieve and if it's something
Correct.
that we can help them with. And
Mm-hmm.
then he's also the one that's doing the project assessment and putting together the budget from the
Correct.
early stages.
Yeah.
And then he kind of hands it off to us, myself, Kristen, who is our project coordinator. We just added somebody last year. Her name is Lucia. And then we have like our virtual bookkeeper that is out of Colorado. And so we have a small team, and that's the way that I like it. And we talk about this a lot because I know that, you have a bigger team, you can do bigger projects, you can do more. We typically are running on a wait list. So we don't have, if somebody calls me and says, I need to close on this house in 30 days and I need your help, I typically can't do that because I have commitments with other projects and we have people waiting on a wait list. I try not to make it like an extensive wait list, but we typically somebody would have to wait to start working with our team. And we do that by design, just because we are about an hour and 15 minutes north from most of our projects. All of our work is, everything except one project is in Fort Lauderdale area, Plantation and Fort Lauderdale area. So it's hard geographically to be coming down. I have, Kristen boots on the ground here, but she can only handle so much too, right? She's one person. So trying to, be respectful of her sanity and her time as well.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I beat myself up, and my husband will do the same. Like we could be doing more, and you listen. That's the one of the things about podcasts. You listen to them and you're like, oh, I should be doing that by now. Like he did 20 houses, and you compare it, right? Comparison is the stealer of joy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I have to kind of bring myself down to a ground level often, because I'm like, this is the choice that we made because we put our family first. And right now our children are little and they need our attention, and I don't want somebody else raising my child. There's nothing wrong with that if people have that opportunity, or if that's how they choose to do things. But I know that this moment in life is such a small fleeting moment, and I don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss it. Yeah, me either.
I can't trust another person to raise my child the way that I want her to be raised. And I will regret it for the rest of my life if I look back and I'm like, I wasn't there because of this project or that project. We are paying the bills, and that's the most important thing. And we are able to be there for our family. It's a big juggle. And so we know that. And I know that if we grow our team to something bigger, it's going to be an even bigger juggle.
Bigger stuff,
so I like to still be involved in our projects. I like to still do the design. I never had in my sights to be running a large design studio or a big design studio and be like the head person and have other designers.
All of these designers,
I'm like, this is why I love doing it, and that's the way that we structured it. And so that's for the foreseeable future. That's the way that we're going to do it, at least while our kids are small. That's the way we're going to continue to move forward with our business. But, as they start getting older and being more independent, we've talked about like, where do we want to see this going? There's a couple of paths that we have talked about, maybe to get our name up in Hope Sound, Jupiter, Stewart area. Maybe it's going to be a furniture store that we also provide design services. But we know that is a commitment,
for sure.
Not only capital, but time. Commitment. And I've learned over the years since I became a Christian, I got baptized in 2019, but I got saved in California.
Mhm.
And I realized that like we can't really plan everything down to the T. So right now,
Correct. Mhm.
this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there's some talks about other stuff,
Yeah.
but who knows? It's God's plan and it's God's timing. And I just trust that he will guide us. And this is something that we pray about all the time. We just trust in his guidance,
Yeah.
and we put it, that's the whole move to Hope Sound. Yeah, was 100% putting faith in him, because on paper it did not make
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we wonderful book called Sacred Pace. I recommend it for any Christian that's like trying to decide on like a big change or something like that.
Mhm.
Is a great book that basically lays out like, you learn to pray for things, but like make it more of a specific prayer, and
Yeah.
write out your pros and cons. And that's
Correct,
what
correct,
we
correct.
did. Pros and cons.
Mhm.
If we move up here, what's going to happen? Da, 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 da. And then you wait. And that's the
Mhm.
part that is really hard to do,
That's the
because
part that's hard for everybody.
yeah, you
Yeah.
just wait for circumstances to kind of happen,
Mhm.
and the doors to close and the doors to open. And then you start seeing like, okay, well, obviously that's where he wants us to go. And
Mhm.
we don't know how this is going to work, but he
Yeah.
does. So we just got
Mhm.
to trust him. And that's what we did. And we don't regret it. Love it. It's an
Yeah.
amazing transition. It's been an
No, no,
amazing.
no. It looks like amazing. I see your videos and stuff like that, right? And because when you told me Hope Sound, I'm like, where
Where
is
is
that?
that?
I had to look on a map. I'm like, this thing is
Is that in the
very
country?
far north, right? Because it's not like South Florida, but it is still South Florida, but
Yeah.
it's up there. So
It's a small community, nestled between two big cities, which is great because
mhm.
we're in a small community, but you can go to Stewart. It has great nightlife, arts district, same thing down with Jupiter. So very close to West Palm Beach. So it's great.
No, great, great. So what would you say is what differentiates you guys from other spec home builders or from other design build firms?
Um, for design build firms, I would say the project assessment and feasibility study from the beginning,
Mhm.
and really pushing the project to be under one umbrella. And
Mhm.
I know that that's what the build term is, but there's some different definitions of the design build. So just to be clear, we don't have our GC and us are not in business together. So the way that we actually do it is it gives us freedom to be able to put the right general contractor, the right architect for each project. So as you know, smaller projects are going to have a GC for that type of work, and then ground up, because the ground up GCs are not going to want to do the smaller projects, and vice versa. So you to pigeonhole you into one particular general contractor is
Mhm.
not a good place to be. And we learned that when we did the investments. We need to have multiple people being able to handle multiple things. You don't want to put all your eggs in one
Mhm.
basket. So
Yep.
that gives us the freedom to be able to work with different disciplines, GC, architects, engineers, and having that really uncomfortable conversation in the beginning about
Correct.
realistically what is your
What
budget.
it's gonna cost?
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if other design firms do this. I don't know if this differentiates us, but I don't believe they do, just from the stories that I've heard from people who are coming from other design firms.
Mhm.
We when we set that budget for each area, when we're designing, we're getting quotes as we're designing. So all of the millwork is quoted. And for instance, a project that we're working on right now, we quoted all of the kitchen millwork, and it was way more than we expected. So we had to
Mhm.
kind of make some value engineering,
Yeah.
decisions, and scale back and pivot on certain things. And we don't ever want to bring a design to a client and do a presentation and then finding out too late, like months later, oh, guess what? We priced it out. We can't do it. So they
Mhm.
get so so in love
So
with that.
yeah, exactly. Mhm.
It's an emotional thing. Like they can visualize themselves in this space, and then to have to break to them, sorry, you have to spend more money, or
Mm-hmm.
you have to value engineer back. So our goal is always to be able to only present what we know is going to fit within that budget allowance that we've given them from the beginning.
Yeah.
So and that helps kind of keep expectations, and I think that helps with the customer's experience.
Yep, yep, yep. No, for sure, for sure, for sure. And then what about specs?
So we stopped doing specs.
Oh, you stopped doing them? Okay.
Well, we sold our last spec in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And because we didn't know. I mean, COVID happened.
Correct, correct, correct.
Those
Yeah.
were our two first builds, two
Mm-hmm.
new builds. We bought in an area that we weren't sure that it was going to pull that kind of listing price. And then COVID hit, and we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, you know.
Yeah.
But little did we know,
Yeah, yeah, that
we
helped.
made out okay, but
Yeah.
little did we know that Florida was going to experience this super boom in real estate.
Yeah.
And it was a risk that we took, but we were
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, let's just kind of see what happens, because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And
Yeah.
then we moved up to Hope Sound, and then
Yeah.
now we're doing actually a spec home in Port Salerno, which is pretty much like Stuart, Florida. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be our first one up there,
Up
and it's
here. Yep.
our first one in 5 years. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
we built in 2020. So we got the bug, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
we were just
Yeah.
kind of getting the lay of the land
Okay.
and
Yeah.
seeing,
Exactly. See.
you know, what's
Yeah.
going to happen. Now we feel a little more confident, especially in the area where we're at, because
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to stay on top of what kind of improvements that the city is making, and
Correct.
infrastructures and stuff. And if we see that there's movement, because JP could speak to this more, but he sees a lot of push. A lot of people moved to that area from down here, so
North.
they're
Yeah.
seeing,
Exactly.
yeah,
There is. Yeah.
yeah,
It's getting stuffier here. Well,
yeah,
not getting. It's stuffy.
it's stuffy, but it's also
Yeah.
not affordable for most people. And
Correct.
so it's still affordable up there. So people are starting to
Mm-hmm.
make their way north. And I think people are finding that there's a lot of people from New York and California, like a lot of people coming from other states to this
Mm-hmm.
area. So they're kind of getting pushed out. And so
Yeah.
they're kind of moving their way up the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing, you know, some of the areas kind of get built up there. So it's a great opportunity to start investing in real estate there. So we had an opportunity kind of fall in our lap, literally.
Mm-hmm.
There was a tornado that hit a
Oh wow.
neighborhood that was
Mm-hmm.
adjacent to us during Hurricane Milton. We
Mm-hmm.
have a longtime friend that bought a house in that neighborhood that we were renovating for him, because he's in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And we were 90% complete.
Oh
And the
man.
tornado just ripped through that neighborhood.
It hit it. Oh man, that's
Hit that
crazy.
neighborhood, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
all the 3 houses around them were completely destroyed. They since then have been demolished, and there's just a concrete slab right now,
Oh
because
wow.
they're wood houses, wood frame
They're
houses
wood.
up
They're wood
there.
frame. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And luckily our friend's house we had just installed steel supports and structures in the corner of the house. So the house was able to withstand the hurricane, and we lost all of the beautiful oak trees in the front yard, and we had some damage to the roof. But everything else, except for the detached garage that literally just like got picked up and went,
And
we
yeah.
showed up, it was gone.
So
It's in the field. I don't know
yeah,
where.
exactly.
It's so
Yeah.
crazy. So we, you know, had relationships with the neighbors because we've been working there. And so we offered on the house next door
Yeah.
her land value, and we got it. And so now we're going to put our first spec home up there.
Sounds
So
good.
we're
Yeah.
jumping in.
Yeah, that's actually what's gonna happen in California. That's unfortunately, but
Yeah.
there's gonna need to be a big push to kind of grow what
Mhm.
was lost through those fires. So, unfortunately, natural disasters happen,
Mhm.
but they also create opportunity for bigger, better real estate opportunities. So,
Mhm.
so we spent a lot of time together. I just wanted to say thank you. And then I wanted to ask you, because I ask everybody this, what was your biggest lessons learned from life and in business?
Biggest lessons learned from life, I would say, like we just touched upon, is I don't really have as much control as I think that I might have. And that the older that I get and the deeper that I get into my faith is really letting go of control, and
Correct.
you know, not being fearful of the future, because if you look back in my life, there was many times where I'm like, I don't know, I think I'm going to be living on the street.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
ends up working out. And,
Correct.
he has a tendency of kind of, and I'm talking about God,
Yeah.
he has a tendency of, maybe scaring you a little bit, like, oh, this is getting precarious. And then all of a sudden, this big
Yeah.
blessing comes in. Okay,
Mhm.
you were there the whole time,
Yeah, exactly.
So that, I would say, life lesson. Business, I take, say what you want to say about him. Donald Trump had a quote that he used to say. This is way before he even got into politics, and this is because, and I'm quoting him because he was integral to my real estate investment, getting into it, because I read
Yeah.
all of his books. Like Cindy was doing Robert Kiyosaki, which was a great book,
Yeah.
but I was getting into, Trump University was what he had at that time.
Okay.
One of the things that he said was never, ever, ever give up. And that stuck with me. And if he doesn't emulate exactly what he said, I mean,
Yeah.
so that goes through my mind, because there's been a lot of times where you want to give up. Things
Correct.
go south, a client gets upset with you,
Correct.
or that you don't make that much money on a spec home or something.
Correct.
You're like, why am I doing this? And hey, guess what? I love this. This is my passion. I get so much out of it. And so
Yeah.
this is just a bump in the road, but it's not going to make me give up. And I've noticed that when I feel like that, it will take me a couple of days. And then I use that as fuel to, like, okay, we're going to change things. This is not going to happen to us again.
Correct.
And,
Correct.
we move forward from there. And I that's what I would say, how I've learned in business. Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. I always put one step in front of the other. I mean, that's just the reality.
One day at a
matter,
time.
Yeah, one day at a time. Yeah, one step at a time, no matter how hard it is. Right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, I just want to say thank you for blessing us with your time.
Thank you for having me. I would love to share with you one last thing.
Go for it.
Because, you had talked about being an integral part of your journey, right?
Yeah.
Which was great to hear. But I don't know if you know this, that you guys were actually an integral part of our journey in growing our family.
Yeah.
Because we had heard about your struggles. We used to get together for lunch and stuff every once in a while. And we knew Cindy and your struggles with getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day, and we said it, as soon as you sign the paperwork for foster kids, we're like, you're going to get pregnant. Everybody does as soon as they do that. And sure enough, you did. And I, at that time, was struggling with our second child.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And she said somebody recommended this ovulation bracelet. And I was like, really? And so I went out and I bought it. And sure enough, within a couple of months,
it worked. Yeah,
it worked.
I do remember that. Yeah. And then now you have two now. Yeah, I'll give Cindy the credit for that one. So, but yes, I knew that was a pivotal time, for you, and I'm grateful that baby is here now, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining us on the Pro Design Builder. It's not just about building a business; it's about building a vision and a life by design. Have a good day.
Thank you.